He became the stand-in for her vanished lover, then uncovered her horrifying secret. In a quiet corner of rural Pennsylvania, a young man named Ethan grew up under the faded red roof of a small house nestled beside a gentle, winding river. After his father was tragically taken from him at the age of 8, Ethan watched his mother, Sarah, toil endlessly. She moved between the green fields of their hometown and the sprawling metropolis of Phoenix Harbor, sacrificing everything just to keep him in school. The image of her thin, calloused hands was seared into his memory. Every phone call home ended with her pleading voice. Just study hard, son. All I want is for you to have a better life. To escape this poverty. That's all I need to be happy. That simple dream seemed within reach when Ethan was accepted into Northwood University, a prestigious institution located in the affluent district of Silver Creek. He packed his bags, carrying the full weight of his mother's hopes, and set foot in Phoenix Harbor. Life in the worn-down dormitory was a struggle. Every month, he had to carefully stretch every dollar his mother sent to cover his meals and books. Despite it all, Ethan was a brilliant student with a kind heart and a warm smile that made him well-loved by his peers. One early autumn morning during his freshman year, a quiet event took place that Ethan would later call the day fate intervened, the day that would change his entire life, and very nearly destroy it. The university hosted a seminar on modern agricultural investment, and the main sponsor was Eleanor Vance, a renowned businesswoman in her 60s, famous in the worlds of real estate and advanced biotechnology. She appeared in an elegant, ivory-colored silk dress, her posture regal, when the dean invited her to the podium. Her eyes, though deep, were not cold. Her voice was as gentle as the first breeze of the season, each word clear and captivating. After the seminar, a professor happened to introduce Ethan to Mrs. Vance so he could ask about the high-tech farm models she was investing in. The young student's sincere eyes and his rustic yet confident voice captured the powerful woman's attention. She offered a soft, gentle smile and asked, "Would you like to visit my villa sometime? I have many fascinating books on agriculture I'd love to share." Ethan hesitated, but her gaze was so incredibly kind, like a mother, an aunt, or something even deeper. He nodded. A simple nod. He never could have known. Had just opened a gateway to a world he never dared to imagine. A place where everything was too perfect, too luxurious, and far, far too suffocating. From that fateful meeting, a strange relationship began to blossom between the poor 19-year-old student and the powerful 60-year-old woman. To outsiders, it looked like a May-December romance, a foolish infatuation, or the desperate ambition of a poor boy trying to climb the social ladder. But no one knew the chilling truth hidden behind the lavish dinners, the expensive gifts, and Eleanor Vance's gentle smile, a truth that would leave anyone who heard it utterly stunned. That afternoon, a light rain began to fall over Silver Creek. After class, Ethan stood waiting at the campus gate, his heart pounding with anticipation. The text message Mrs. Vance had sent earlier still echoed in his mind. "I'm sending a car to pick you up this afternoon. Don't be nervous. Just think of it as visiting a relative." A sleek, charcoal gray sedan pulled up to the curb. A middle-aged man got out and respectfully opened the door for Ethan. The student was dumbfounded, having never set foot in such a luxury car before. His heart hammered against his ribs. The car turned into an exclusive, gated community. The kind of place people like Ethan could only ever stare at from the outside. The gates to Mrs. Vance's villa opened slowly, like a portal to another dimension. A shimmering koi pond sat in the center of the courtyard. A miniature waterfall played a soothing melody, and the 3-story European-style mansion glowed with a warm, inviting light. Ethan stepped inside as if in a dream, afraid to touch anything for fear of dirtying it. Mrs. Vance appeared at the top of the staircase, wearing a deep-toned silk robe, her gentle smile seeming to embrace the entire space. "You're here. Was the ride okay? Come. Have dinner with me." During the meal, for the first time in his life, Ethan tasted dishes with names and flavors he couldn't identify, all within a room that felt like an art gallery. Mrs. Vance told him stories of her past, of how she started with nothing, of her husband who passed away early, and how, with no children, She poured all her energy into building her empire. My life has been very lonely, Ethan, she said softly. But having you here tonight, it feels like this house finally has a soul again. Ethan looked down. His heart suddenly still. He didn't understand why her gentleness made him so flustered. It wasn't like his mother's. Or a teacher's. It felt like the tenderness of a woman desperate for affection. After dinner, she led him to her private library. A vast room with hundreds of books arranged neatly on shelves, smelling faintly of wood and dried flowers. As she poured him a cup of hibiscus tea, Ethan's gaze fell upon a photograph hanging in the center of the room. It was a portrait of a young man in his early 20s, standing beside Mrs. Vance, smiling brightly. "That's Cole, my best friend's son," she said, her voice like a passing whisper. "He lived here for a while. But he's gone far away now." Ethan didn't think much of it then. He simply assumed she had cared for someone like a nephew who had eventually moved on. It was only much later, when everything was revealed, that he would understand the name Cole was not just a former guest, but a dark memory no one dared to disturb. That night, at her invitation, Ethan stayed at the villa. In the warm room with its pristine white sheets, he tossed and turned, not out of fear, but because something strange and nameless was growing inside him. From that night on, Ethan's life took a turn down a path with no return. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the white curtains, Ethan opened his eyes, feeling dazed. The gentle scent of jasmine, essential oil filled the room. The clock on the wall read 7 o'clock. He quickly sat up, planning to pack up and get permission to head back to campus. But when he stepped out of his room, he found Mrs. Vance already seated at the dining table downstairs, dressed in a pale beige silk gown, her hair in an elegant bun, calmly sipping chamomile tea. Seeing Ethan, she smiled. "No need to rush. I've already called your head of department and excused you from classes today. Stay one more day. Think of it as a small retreat." Ethan was momentarily flustered. No one had ever shown him such meticulous care. He nodded slightly, a mix of gratitude and suspicion swirling within him. But he couldn't bring himself to refuse. Breakfast was simple yet exquisite. Mrs. Vance spoke of the modern farms in the city of Vista Ridge, where she had investments and managed hundreds of employees. Occasionally, she would show Ethan pictures on her phone of lush green fields, high-tech greenhouses, and the young people working there. "If you'd like, I can arrange an internship for you this summer. But really, I'd prefer you spend more time with me, talking, helping me read. I feel so at ease when you're around." Her words felt less like a request and more like an invitation, one far more intimate than was appropriate. Ethan stammered, "Thank you, ma'am. But I'm just a student. I'm afraid I wouldn't be much help." Mrs. Vance gently set her teacup down, her eyes locking with his. "You just need to be yourself, Ethan. That's more than enough." From that day on, Ethan became a frequent visitor at the villa. Small gifts began appearing in his pockets, a new smartphone, a pair of leather shoes, even a custom-tailored navy blue suit. Mrs. Vance said they were rewards for being a good, attentive boy. Back at the university, whispers started to spread. Some called Ethan a boy toy, while others snickered behind his back that he was selling his youth to climb into the upper class. But Ethan didn't care. To him, the only thing he saw clearly was a future bursting with opportunity. Maya, a classmate who had long had a secret crush on Ethan, began to notice the change in him. He was no longer the kind, gentle boy who used to borrow her notes. Now, Ethan was distant, secretive, with a faraway look in his eyes. When Maya invited him to a study group, he declined. She sent him texts that he read but never answered. One afternoon, Maya happened to see Ethan stepping out of the luxury sedan parked near the campus gate. Inside, through the tinted window, she saw a familiar female figure. Mrs. Vance was smiling and gave Maya a slight nod. That woman's gaze sent a shiver down Maya's spine. That night, back in her dorm room, Maya couldn't sleep. The image of Eleanor Vance, that elegant woman with a calm smile but eyes as cold as ice, haunted her. A nameless dread began to rise. A fear for Ethan, The boy whose warm smile used to brighten her day whenever he helped her with a difficult problem. Who had now transformed into a complete stranger. Maya turned on her laptop and typed Eleanor Vance Phoenix Harbor into the search bar. Dozens of articles appeared, praising her illustrious career. Her rise from a textile worker to the real estate queen of the North. However, what caught Maya's eye were the veiled rumors posted on a few private forums, that the woman was immensely wealthy but profoundly lonely. And that people who had once been close to her had all vanished under mysterious circumstances. Maya tried another keyword search. Eleanor Vance's young lover. To her shock, she found an old post from 5 years ago on an anonymous message board. In it, a user claimed their younger brother had once worked as Mrs. Vance's personal assistant. Then suddenly quit without reason and cut off all contact with his family. Attached to the post was a blurry, long-distance photo of a young man in his early 20s, standing in front of the villa's gate. He looked unnervingly similar to Ethan. A sharp, anxious pain shot through Maya's heart. Meanwhile, Ethan was living in what felt like a dream. He no longer had to squeeze onto crowded city buses or worry about where his next meal was coming from. A chauffeur drove him every morning. And he ate his dinner in a magnificent dining room every night. Mrs. Vance cared for him like a precious treasure. From providing him with herbal supplements and extra tutoring schedules to even managing his bank account. "You don't need to think about a thing," she would say. "Just let me handle it. Your youth is priceless, Ethan. But to me, your presence is more valuable than time itself." Ethan had felt conflicted at first, but slowly, he let things go. Initially, it was out of pity for her, a lonely woman who had endured so much. Then, he wasn't so sure anymore. Was it pity? Or had he become dependent? But even living in the lap of luxury, Ethan began to notice strange things. Every time he left the villa, a driver accompanied him. He had tried calling some of his old friends, but no one ever picked up. It was only later that he discovered all the contact numbers in his phone had been subtly changed or blocked. One night, while reading a book in his room, he heard a faint clicking sound from the ceiling. He stepped into the hallway, looked up, and spotted a tiny camera, cleverly hidden behind a wall sconce. It wasn't just one. It seemed every corner of the house was under surveillance. He thought about asking Mrs. Vance but decided against it. Whenever she looked at him, her eyes were still so gentle, still looked as if they wanted to pull him into a comforting embrace. "You are the light of this house, Ethan," he would smile back. But deep inside, a gnawing feeling began to grow, the feeling that he was no longer free. It was as if his entire life had become a gilded cage, and the door had been silently locked a long time ago. Maya decided she couldn't stand by any longer. Early the next morning, she went to the university library and began digging through the archives of past seminars. In an internal newsletter from 3 years prior, she found a name, Cole Tran, a former student from the class of 18, who had been a standout representative invited to work at the farm sponsored by Eleanor Vance. But strangely, from that point on, there was no further information about him. No articles. No photos. No achievements. It was as if he had simply ceased to exist. Her intuition screamed that whatever was happening to Ethan had happened before, and that he was on the verge of repeating the fate of someone who had already vanished into silence. That afternoon, Maya found her way to Ethan's mother, Sarah, who was working as a housekeeper for a family in another district. Sarah was surprised to see her. "Oh, Ethan is so busy with his studies lately, dear," she said, her voice filled with pride. "He told me Mrs. Vance is supporting him, even paying for him to take extra language and soft skills classes, so he's staying at the villa." When he told me, I cried with joy. Maya clenched her fists, hesitating before asking, "Don't you think it's all happening too fast?" "Ma'am, I'm worried about him. He's changed so much. He's not the same Ethan anymore." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, her eyes slowly clouding with sadness. She pulled a faded photograph from her pocket. It was Ethan in high school, hugging her with a bright, innocent smile. "I've felt something was a little strange, too. But we're poor, dear. When someone helps, we're just grateful. I think maybe Mrs. Vance truly cares for him." Maya took the older woman's hand. her gaze firm. I don't think it's just kindness. Ma'am, I'm going to find out what's really going on. At the same time, back at the Silver Creek Villa, Ethan was living through a stretch of days that were unnervingly peaceful. Eleanor now referred to him as family. He no longer attended many classes at the university, instead being privately tutored at the house. A driver accompanied him every time he went out. His text messages, and his internet history, it was all under her control. Once, he tried to send an email to Maya from his laptop, but an error message popped up. Connection failed. Access restricted. He suddenly thought of Cole, the young man in the photograph in the library. Eleanor had said he'd gone far away, but where was that? She never elaborated. No family. No pictures. No funeral, just gone. One night, Ethan snuck up to the third floor, the one area of the house Eleanor had strictly forbidden him from entering. The door was locked tight, but from the crack at the bottom, a faint, acrid smell seeped out, like antiseptic mixed with damp mold. He shuddered. When he returned to his room, the light was already on. A new, impeccably tailored suit was laid out on his bed. Beside it was a small note written in elegant script. Tomorrow is my birthday, and I want you to wear this. Be with me all day. Don't go anywhere. Eleanor. Ethan swallowed hard, his mind a swirl of confusion. He didn't know if this was love, care, or a golden leash tightening around his neck. Outside, the rain began to fall again, just like the first night he had arrived. But this time, his heart felt no flutter of excitement, only a vague, chilling cold. On the day of Eleanor's birthday, the Silver Creek Villa was transformed. The entire garden was carpeted with white lilies. A long banquet table was set up beside the koi pond. Golden light spilled from the windows, making the mansion look like a miniature palace. Ethan stood silently in his room, holding the expensive suit. The fabric was cool and soft, smelling of a high-end cologne, but it made his skin crawl. He had never been to such a lavish party, let alone been the guest of honor. As Eleanor had told him before, I don't need anyone else to wish me well. Having you by my side is enough. That evening, the party began. Melodious music drifted across the breezy courtyard. There were only a handful of guests, a few trusted assistants, the housekeeper, and two of Eleanor's oldest friends. This wasn't a flashy celebration. It was a private ritual. Ethan sat beside Eleanor, who wore a deep plum-colored velvet dress, a string of pearls at her wrist, her silver hair styled in a neat bun. Her eyes shone with a gentle joy, as if she were reliving her youth. You know, she leaned in and whispered, her hand gently resting on his side. This is the first time I've ever celebrated my birthday with family beside me. From now on, you have to be here for every single one. Ethan forced a smile. He felt a lump in his throat, as if he were being swallowed by the opulent, rule-bound atmosphere. The guests chatted quietly, everything unfolding like a well-rehearsed play. As the party neared its end, Eleanor stood up, raising a glass of red wine. I would like to make a small announcement. As of today, I will be establishing a scholarship fund in the name of the person beside me, Ethan, for underprivileged students at Northwood University. I am also officially naming Ethan as the heir to my personal fortune. The entire space fell silent. Ethan was frozen in shock. She had never once mentioned this. The people around them rose to their feet and applauded. A few came over to congratulate him with polite but knowing smiles. Inside Ethan, however, something shattered. He felt as if he'd been thrust into the role of a puppet, meticulously prepared by Eleanor for a performance he never agreed to. Later that night, after the guests had left, Ethan quietly slipped out into the garden and sat on a stone bench near the pond. The wind rustled through the trees, the leaves whispering like dark omens. He pulled out his phone, intending to call his mother. But a new text from an unknown number appeared. If you're at the Silver Creek Villa, be careful. A boy named Cole lived there. Now he's gone without a trace. Ethan shot up, looking around frantically. Who sent that? Who knew about Cole? Before he could reply, his phone rang. Eleanor Vance is calling. Her familiar voice came through the speaker. Ethan. Dear. Are you all right? I saw you went outside. It's getting chilly. Come in and rest. Her tone was gentle, but for the first time, Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He turned around. From the second-floor window, Eleanor was standing there, a wine glass in her hand, a faint smile on her lips. He had no idea how long she had been watching him. After that night, Ethan couldn't sleep. From Eleanor's gaze watching him in the garden to the anonymous text message, it all felt like pieces of a dark, twisted puzzle falling into place. The next morning, he used the excuse of a major essay to get permission to leave the villa. Eleanor frowned slightly but nodded. Before he left, she placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice low. If anyone contacts you, especially people claiming to know about the past, don't believe them. They're just jealous of what we have. Ethan nodded mutely, but his mind was racing. Stepping outside the villa gates, for the first time in weeks, he breathed in the air of true freedom. At a small cafe near campus, Ethan tried the number from the text message, but it was no longer in service. He decided to go to the university library and comb through the alumni records. He found a faint entry for Cole Tran. Born in 1995. Graduated with honors. Had been a student representative for a biotechnology program with Eleanor Vance. But the record simply stopped there. No current workplace. No contact address, a complete blank. When he asked around, an older professor vaguely recalled. Ah, young Cole. A good kid. I think after he was invited to work privately at Mrs. Vance's villa, he dropped out mid-semester. No one ever heard from him again. Ethan left, his head heavy. It was all too coincidental. The photo in the library. Eleanor's claim that Cole had gone far away. And now the erased trail at the university. He sat on a bench on campus, his phone vibrating again. A text from another unknown number. This time, it was a single line. Don't become the next Cole. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead. He scanned his surroundings. Saw no one suspicious. But the feeling of being watched clung to him. Just then, Maya appeared. She was holding a file folder. Seeing Ethan, she said nothing, simply placed the folder on the bench between them and looked him straight in the eye. You need to know the truth. I've been digging for a month. People have tried to expose her before. But they were threatened. One of them disappeared without a trace. Ethan opened the folder. Inside were printouts of old forum posts, text messages, screenshots from phone surveillance software, and, most damning of all, a copy of Eleanor Vance's psychological evaluation from over 20 years ago. The diagnosis: borderline personality disorder with obsessive control. This isn't about love, Ethan, Maya whispered. You're in the hands of someone who can't control their own emotions. And everyone who tries to leave her disappears. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. Every gentle word, every expensive gift, every seemingly caring glance now replayed in his mind, tainted with the chilling truth of her control. Was he just a new Cole? A replacement in the twisted emotional collection of a powerful, lonely woman? And if he was, would he ever be able to get away? Ethan shot to his feet, clutching the folder, his eyes wild with panic. Can you help me? He whispered. Maya nodded. Though her own heart was breaking, she knew she had to save him before it was too late. That evening, Ethan returned to the villa in silence. The driver opened his door. The housekeeper bowed as usual. But to Ethan, it all felt cold and fake. Eleanor was waiting in the living room. She wasn't smiling. As soon as he stepped inside, she spoke, her voice flat. You were out for a long time today. I had to wait nearly 2 hours for dinner. Ethan froze. I had some work at the university. She rose and walked toward him. Her eyes had lost their usual gentleness and were now sharp, probing. Who did you talk to? Where did you go? Did anyone message you? A cold sweat ran down Ethan's back. He struggled to keep his voice steady. I just met with some classmates for a group project. Eleanor was silent. After a moment, she smiled and gently caressed his cheek. I believe you. But don't ever hide anything from me. You know that, don't you? This house is for love, not for betrayal. Sleep was impossible that night. Ethan sat in his room. The file from Maya hidden at the bottom of a drawer. Every creak in the hallway made him jump. He didn't know what Eleanor was thinking. but he knew she was no longer the gentle woman he had first met. The next morning, he put on a mask of cheerfulness, trying to do everything exactly as Eleanor wished. But beneath the surface, he was secretly planning his escape, slowly gathering his personal belongings and looking for more evidence of the villa's dark secrets. He thought his plan was working. Until one evening, he tried to plug a USB drive containing the data from Maya's file into his laptop. The screen flickered, and a red warning flashed. Unauthorized access detected. All activity will be reported to the administrator. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. He yanked the USB out, pulling the power cord with it in his panic. A few minutes later, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Eleanor. "Don't try to run. Every move you make is in my hands." Ethan stood frozen. He realized he had never been free. Every corner of the villa was watched, every connection to the outside world monitored and controlled. He stepped onto the balcony. The wind was strong, and his fingers felt numb with cold. Down in the courtyard, a dim light illuminated a weathered stone statue of a young boy with his arms crossed. His face blurred as if he were about to cry. Ethan remembered Eleanor telling him it was modeled after a former nephew who had lived there. Cole. A shiver ran down his spine. The next morning, Ethan pretended to be sick to get out of his classes. But before he could even email the university, Eleanor appeared at his door with a glass of warm milk. She sat down, her gaze intense. "I heard you were on your computer last night. What were you looking for?" Ethan was speechless. She let out a soft, slow laugh. "I know you were just backing up your schoolwork, but if you were really thinking of leaving me, you should at least let me prepare. I hate sudden goodbyes. Like with Cole, I never even got to say a final word." Her words tore down the final curtain. Ethan looked at her. Her eyes glistened as if with real pain, but behind that hurt was a bottomless darkness. A warning that anyone who dared to walk out of her life would pay a price. From that day on, Ethan felt like he was being strangled. Eleanor remained gentle. She still smiled and made him milk every night. But he no longer trusted any of it. He understood that everything was calculated, that her eyes followed his every move. The third floor, with its lingering smell of antiseptic and mold, became his obsession. The door was always shut, protected by an electronic lock. He tried to get close several times, but the housekeeper always stopped him with a gentle excuse. "That's just a storage room. Sir, it's far too dusty for you." One night, Ethan pretended to be asleep and snuck into the hall. He moved silently, carrying a small piece of copper wire he'd taken from a science lab, hoping to pick the lock. Suddenly, a soft chime echoed through the hall, not loud, but enough to make him freeze. The hallway lights snapped on. Eleanor's bedroom door opened. She stood there in a cream-colored nightgown, her hair down, her eyes not angry, but filled with a profound sadness. "Ethan, you really don't trust me anymore, do you?" Ethan said nothing. Words felt meaningless. She walked toward him and gently took the copper wire from his hand. "I understand. You're scared. But the third floor isn't a place for just anyone. Inside is where I keep my memories." She paused, then continued. "Tomorrow, if you really want to know, I'll let you see it. But I need you to promise me one thing." "What is it?" Ethan asked, his throat dry. "No matter what you see, you won't leave me. Can you do that?" The next morning, the sky over Phoenix Harbor was gray, a light rain misting the entrance to the villa. Ethan walked up to the third floor, with Eleanor following close behind. The door opened with her fingerprint. On the scanner's screen, Ethan clearly saw the name flash, Coltran. As the door swung open, the smell of mold and faded lavender washed over him. The room was dark, lit only by a dim yellow light. In the center was a bed with a pristine white cover, a wardrobe, a bookshelf, and a large portrait of Cole hanging on the wall. Everything was preserved like a miniature museum. Eleanor stood silently, her hand trembling as she rested it on the headboard. "Cole lived here. He was so much like you, Ethan. Your eyes, your smile, even the way you talk. I thought if I just had him by my side, I would never be lonely again." "Where is he now?" Ethan blurted out. Eleanor looked at him, her eyes welling with tears. but her voice was terrifyingly calm. He left. Without a word. I looked for him for so long. Perhaps, like you, he just didn't have the patience for me. Ethan clenched his fists. He didn't dare ask more, but he knew. Cole hadn't just left. He had been erased from the world. Just as she was now trying to erase Ethan's own mind. That afternoon, a secret message came from Maya. You need to leave the villa. Now. I sent the info on Cole to the police, but they can't act without physical evidence. Get anything from the third floor, something with DNA. A document. A photo. Anything. I'll be waiting for you at the back gate. 2 am. Ethan stared at the screen and nodded. Tonight would be his last night here. Ethan couldn't close his eyes. He counted every tick of the clock. Every gust of wind whistling through the window. At exactly 1:45 a.m. He dressed in black. Tucking his phone into his jacket. He pulled on the thin cloth gloves Maya had given him to avoid leaving fingerprints. From under his bed, he retrieved a small bag containing a few strands of hair from Eleanor's brush. A piece of a fingernail with a dried speck of bloodhead found in a first aid kit on the third floor, and an old photograph of Cole he had managed to pull from its frame. He quietly opened his door and stepped into the suffocating silence of the hallway, heading for the back staircase that led to the service gate where Maya was waiting. But as he placed his hand on the doorknob, he heard a soft breath right behind him. Ethan spun around. In the dim light, a figure stood just a few feet away. It wasn't Eleanor. It was a tall, thin young man with a pale face and vacant, soulless eyes. He wore a faded pajama set, his feet bare, his hair a mess. As he looked closer, Ethan's blood ran cold. It was Cole. Not a photo. Not a memory. But a living person. Who are you? Cole asked. His voice a dry whisper. Ethan was paralyzed. A chill seizing his entire body. He stumbled back but couldn't look away. Cole drifted closer. His eyes lost. Don't go. She'll be angry. She doesn't let anyone leave. She needs someone with her. Forever. The words were a knife in Ethan's brain. He understood. Cole had never left. He hadn't disappeared. He had been kept here by drugs. By psychological manipulation. A form of mental imprisonment. Eleanor had turned him into a living ghost haunting her own home. At that exact moment, the hallway lights flooded on. Eleanor appeared at the top of the stairs, dressed in a black silk robe, a small remote in her hand. Her gentle facade was gone, replaced by a look of absolute ice. Where do you think you're going? Ethan. Ethan clutched the bag in his hand. He knew if he hesitated for a second, he would be next a living puppet just like Cole, bound by a monstrous, twisted love. He tried to lie. I was just going out for some air. Eleanor smiled. A smile with no warmth. Isn't the air in here good enough? She stepped closer. Her voice a low murmur in his ear. You're not going anywhere tonight. I had the back gate locked. Did you forget? Every step you take is one I've already planned. Ethan froze. But just then, his phone vibrated. A text from Maya. I'm at the gate. I see a shadow in the garden. Are you okay? The message was an electric shock, jolting him with courage. He looked Eleanor straight in the eye. The fear finally gone. I'm not staying here. I am not Cole. And I don't belong to you. For a split second, panic flashed in Eleanor's eyes. But then she smiled again and retreated into the shadows. Go on. Try. But remember, no one ever escapes my love. No one. Ethan turned and bolted for the back door, toward his only chance. His feet felt like lead, but his resolve was unbreakable. The door burst open and he sprinted across the wet grass. Ahead, he could see Maya's silhouette behind a bush. Ethan, she whispered, her face pale with terror. Hurry. I saw someone circling around the side of the house. Ethan didn't speak. Just shoved the cloth bag of evidence into her hands. His face was ghostly white. His shirt soaked with sweat. He's in there. It's Cole. He's alive. But he's not himself. It's like he's been hypnotized. You have to get out of here now. Maya insisted, grabbing his arm. I called the police. But they'll need time. Just then, a floodlight from the corner of the garden blazed to life, pinning them in its glare. A cold, Deep voice called out from behind them. Going somewhere. Ethan. They turned. It was Mason. Eleanor's large, well-built personal assistant. He walked slowly toward them. His eyes like daggers. Mrs. Vance would like you to return. Leaving without permission is very rude. Ethan stepped back. Shielding Maya. He snarled. I'm not going back. I'm not a prisoner. The assistant smirked. You live because of her. You study because of her. Your entire future is because of her. You think you can just walk away? Maya quickly pulled out her phone to dial 911. But before she could raise it to her ear, Mason lunged, slapping the phone out of her hand. Don't make a scene. The mistress doesn't like disobedience. Ethan charged, shoving Mason back and pulling Maya into a desperate run toward the side gate. They scrambled through the bushes and across the back lawn toward a small steel gate, locked only with a chain. Shaking, Maya pulled out the copied key Ethan had secretly given her last week and fumbled with the lock. Just one more second. A loud crash came from behind them. Mason was on them, charging with the force of an animal. Ethan spun around, tackling the man and bringing them both to the ground. Ethan. Look out. Maya screamed. Ethan twisted, kicking with all his might. At the same instant, the lock clicked open. Maya threw the gate wide and pulled Ethan through. They ran without looking back. Ran until the villa's lights were swallowed by the darkness. Until the sound of pursuit was nothing but an echo in their minds. They both collapsed under a tree by the side of the road. Maya gripped Ethan's hand. Her voice choked with emotion. You're out. You're really out. Ethan said nothing, but 2 silent tears streamed down his face. They weren't tears of joy. They were for Cole, still trapped inside that house, a soul imprisoned in a lost body. The next morning, at the local police station, Maya submitted all the evidence. The police filed the report but were candid. This is a very complex case. Mrs. Vance has power and connections. We're going to need more time. Ethan sat beside her, his expression grim. He knew the fight had only just begun. 2 days later, Ethan still hadn't had a full night's sleep. He was staying with a friend in a dorm room no one knew about. Maya had warned him to be extremely careful. He knew Eleanor wouldn't give up. And he was right. That morning, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was a red velvet box. He opened it. It was the silver bracelet engraved with Ethan and Eleanor, a gift she had given him. Beneath it was a small card, no matter where you go. I'll be waiting. I have faith that my family will always come home. Maya saw the card and went still. She was challenging him. That same day, a police investigation team arrived at the villa. But they were stopped at the gate by Eleanor Vance's private legal team, a dozen sharply dressed lawyers armed with documents, citing illegal trespass and lack of probable cause. Inside, Eleanor sat calmly in her living room, sipping hot tea. Through the curtains, she watched the scene at her gate and allowed herself a small live, knowing smile. On the 3rd floor, Cole sat by the window, his gaze as lost as ever, murmuring to himself. No one leaves. No one can ever leave. That evening, Ethan received a call from an unknown number. Hello. The voice on the other end was a woman's. Soft and slow. Ethan. Dear. Are you sleeping well? I've been so worried about you. Ethan gripped the phone tightly. You have no right to call me anymore. Why wouldn't I? You're my family. You promised me. Eleanor's voice remained sickeningly sweet. I'm still keeping my side of the promise. I don't blame you. I still love you like a son. Ethan trembled with rage. You're holding a man captive. You destroyed Cole. You turned him into someone who's lost his mind. That isn't love. Eleanor sighed. You don't understand. Cole wanted to leave once. Too. But then he realized no one out there would ever truly care for him. Just like you. Now. Don't you see it? Your old friends are gone. The university is silent, and your family can't help you. Only I am real. Only I am true. I will do whatever it takes to get the police back in there. I will get Cole out. This time, Eleanor didn't answer right away. When she did, her words were like ice. If you do that, someone else will have to pay the price. Perhaps your mother. Click. The line went dead. Ethan was frozen. Maya came into the room and saw his pale face. What is it? What did she threaten you with now? Ethan clutched the phone. His voice hoarse. She's not going to stop. If the police can't get in, then I have to go back. I have to save Cole. I have to end this. Are you insane? Maya's eyes widened. Going back in there is suicide. Ethan shook his head. His fear replaced by steel resolve. No. It's the only way to get our freedom. After that fateful call, there was no more retreating. The threat against his mother was a slap that woke him up. Silence would only empower his tormentor. Though Maya protested fiercely, she saw the decision was made. I'm not going back for her, he said, gently squeezing Maya's hand. I'm going back for Cole. And to protect my mom. And you. That night, Ethan contacted an old friend from his IT class named Leo. He explained the situation vaguely, omitting names, saying only that he needed a device that could jam internal security cameras and a micro recorder. Leo was stunned but agreed. I don't know what you're getting into, man, he warned, but please, be careful. At dawn the next morning, Ethan put on the same simple clothes head worn on his first day at the villa. He took a taxi, getting out a few hundred yards from the main gate and approaching on foot from the side. The gate was closed, cameras sweeping everywhere. But with the jammer from Leo, Ethan blinded the system for 3 minutes, just enough time to slip through the iron fence and into the garden. No dogs barked. No lights came on. It seemed Eleanor never expected he would dare to return. He crept along a familiar path and entered the house through the kitchen window. Everything was pristine, orderly. But it was no longer a home. It was a battlefield. He went to the 3rd floor. Cole's door was locked. But he didn't need to open it. At the end of the hall, Cole was standing there. The dim nightlight cast an eerie glow on his pale face and empty eyes. But when he saw Ethan, a faint spark flickered within them. Why did you come back? Cole's voice was raspy, like someone who had been asleep for years. I came to get you out, Ethan said. You don't have to stay here anymore. Cole shook his head, his lips trembling. She'll know. She always knows. Ethan stepped closer, placing a hand on Cole's shoulder. No one has the right to own another person and call it love. You're a human being. You have a family. A past. You need to go home. Cole looked at Ethan, and a single tear traced a path down his cheek. But just then, they heard footsteps on the stairs. Ethan quickly pulled Cole into a nearby bathroom and locked the door. Through a small crack, he saw Eleanor walking up, wearing a white nightgown, holding a cup of tea. She didn't look around. She just went straight to her room. The silence that followed was terrifying. Ethan seized the moment, attaching the tiny recording device under a cabinet in the hall, right where she often stood to make phone calls. Then, he led Cole back down to the 2nd floor, toward the same back door they had used to escape. But it was now secured with a new keypad lock. Panic surged in Ethan. He pulled out the codebreaker. But it was useless, the signal was being blocked. Cole began to tremble. She knows. We're not getting out. At that instant, every light in the villa flashed on. Eleanor's voice echoed through the internal speaker system, soft and clear. I knew you would come back, Ethan. And I knew you would try to take Cole. But you forgot one thing. The people who belong here can never leave. Because they no longer belong to the world outside. The house was lit up like a stage. The main doors, the side doors all electronically locked. The speakers began to play a soft piano piece. The same one Ethan had heard on his first night. He pulled Cole into a dark corner by the stairs. Eleanor was descending. Step by steady step. In her hand was a small box. Sedatives. She stopped on the 3rd step, looking at Ethan, who stood protectively in front of Cole. Her eyes held no anger, no madness, only a strange, unsettling calm. You don't understand, she said. Do you think I keep Cole here out of selfishness? No, Ethan. I keep him here because no one out there would ever truly love him. Ethan's voice was a low growl, his hand still gripping Cole's arm. He has the right to live his own life. You can't turn him into a display piece and call it affection. Eleanor smiled faintly. You're young. You wouldn't understand. I have loved. I have trusted. I have given everything. And for what? To be betrayed and left alone. Then Cole came. And then you gifts sent to me by fate. All I need is one person to stay. Forever. To never leave. To never betray me. Ethan shook his head. A lump forming in his throat. For the first time, he saw her true weakness. But that weakness had twisted her greatest fear into her most terrifying weapon. Control disguised as love. I am not here to fill a void from your past. And Cole is not a replacement for your loneliness. Behind Ethan, Cole began to shake violently, mumbling, I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't want to leave. But I don't want to stay here anymore either. Eleanor froze, her expression shifting as if she'd been betrayed all over again. Cole, you want to leave me, too? That plea, coming from the lips of the boy who had been a ghost for years, stunned her. His eyes were wet, his vacant look replaced by one of raw, desperate pain. Ma'am, I'm scared. I miss my mom. I don't want to be here forever. The box of pills fell from Eleanor's hand, shattering on the marble steps and scattering dozens of white tablets across the floor. She crumpled, burying her face in her hands. Nobody stays. Nobody ever keeps their promise. She began to sob, the sound of a woman whose past losses had turned her into a monster, terrified of being abandoned one more time. Ethan looked at her, his heart heavy. He didn't hate her. He pitied her, a soul so broken it tried to hold on to love by putting it in chains. He walked over and put a hand on Cole's shoulder. We're leaving. Right now. Cole hesitated, then gave a tiny nod. Ethan helped him walk past Eleanor, who was still on the floor, repeating the words, "Don't leave me," over and over. They reached the door. But just as they did, every lock in the house engaged with a heavy thud. Alarms began to shriek. From a wall-mounted camera, the voice of Mason, the assistant, boomed, "I suggest you turn back. Ethan, the security team is on its way. No one leaves this villa without the mistress' permission." Ethan clenched his fists. The main exits were impossible. He looked up to the second floor, to the back balcony, where a drainpipe ran down the wall to the garden awning below. It was their only way out. Ethan pulled Cole back up the stairs as the alarms wailed and red lights flashed. Behind them, Eleanor hadn't moved, but her head was up now, her eyes following them with a look that was cold, empty, and utterly lost. The balcony door was in front of them. Ethan threw it open. The night wind whipped at their faces, cold and damp. Below, he could see the dark figures of Eleanor's private security team beginning to move across the lawn. "Hold on tight to me," he whispered to Cole. "And don't look down." Cole nodded. His eyes were still hazy. But for the first time in years, a flicker of clarity, a tiny pinprick of light had returned. "Chak chan roy. De la fun ket vakung la hoi ketcho tuan bo kau chuyen. Duk vit lai mot kak tron van." Ethan went first, his hands gripping the slick drainpipe as he carefully slid down. The pipe was slippery with night dew, but he forced himself to stay calm. Below, Maya waited, the hood of her jacket pulled up, her anxious eyes fixed on the balcony. "Be careful," she called out softly. Ethan was halfway down when Cole began his descent, but his strength failed him. Cole's hand slipped, and his body slammed against the wall. "Cole!" Ethan yelled, grabbing onto a metal window frame with one hand and stretching out the other to catch his friend. Cole dangled in midair, blood seeping from his elbow, but his eyes were clearer than they had been in years. "Ethan, don't let go. I don't want to be locked up again." Gritting his teeth, Ethan used every ounce of his strength to pull Cole back toward the pipe. Below, Maya had scrambled onto a low wall, her arms outstretched. "Get him down first. I can catch him." With one last, desperate pull, Ethan managed to guide Cole down onto the awning, where he tumbled into Maya's arms. But before Ethan could follow, floodlights blazed to life. "Freeze," a voice boomed. 3 security guards stormed into the backyard. Just then, the wail of police sirens cut through the night. A car screeched to a halt in front of the villa's main gate, followed by 2 other tactical vehicles. Lieutenant Miller stepped out, holding a special warrant signed by his superiors after an analysis of the audio from the device Ethan had planted. "Everybody stand down." We have a warrant to lock down this property to investigate unlawful imprisonment and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Eleanor's security team froze. The large assistant rushed forward to intervene. But Miller shoved the warrant in his face. We have sufficient evidence from the official complaint, the biological samples, and this audio recording. If you obstruct this investigation, you'll be the first one we arrest. Instantly, the gates were breached, and officers swarmed the property. A team of paramedics quickly attended to Cole, who had passed out in Maya's arms. Inside the house, Eleanor was still sitting on the stairs. When the police entered, she didn't resist or show any surprise. She just smiled faintly and whispered, "I kept them because no one in the world out there needed them." Lieutenant Miller looked down at the silver-haired woman, his eyes cold. "No one has the right to imprison another person in the name of love, ma'am." Eleanor looked up at him, her eyes finally closing. "He promised to stay with me for life." Ethan slumped against the wall outside the villa, gasping for breath, sweat mixing with the cold rain on his face. Maya hugged him tightly. "It's almost over," she whispered. But in his heart, Ethan knew that the end wasn't just about escaping. It was about reclaiming a life from a place that had once masqueraded as paradise. 3 days later, Phoenix Harbor was in an uproar. The news of a female billionaire being investigated for illegally holding 2 male students captive in her villa was everywhere. The story was twisted and sensationalized, and all eyes turned to Ethan. He became a media spectacle, a victim, a boy toy, a gold digger who almost paid the ultimate price. Few understood that behind the flashbulbs was a 19-year-old boy who now had to face the most profound psychological trauma of his life. The police placed Ethan in a safe house for his protection. Maya stayed by his side, but he barely ate or spoke. At night, he was plagued by nightmares where he was trapped in a room of mirrors. Eleanor's voice echoing from hidden speakers, "You belong to me. Forever." One afternoon, Maya handed him a brown envelope from the police department. It stated that Eleanor Vance had officially admitted to the unlawful imprisonment of Cole Tran. However, a court-ordered psychiatric evaluation had diagnosed her with severe borderline personality disorder, requiring mandatory treatment in a secure, specialized facility. Ethan was quiet for a long time. "So, she's not going to prison?" he asked softly. Maya nodded. "Probably not. But she'll be completely isolated from society, with no unsupervised contact. Her assets have also been frozen pending legal proceedings." Ethan leaned back, one part of him relieved, the other feeling an empty void. "I don't hate her, Maya," he said. "I'm just scared that if it wasn't for you, I would have ended up just like Cole, erased from the world without anyone even knowing I still existed." Maya took his hand and squeezed it. "I promised I wouldn't leave you alone, no matter what." Meanwhile, after nearly 3 years, Cole was reunited with his family. A long road of therapy lay ahead of him. His parents wept when they saw their son thin and quiet, but with a flicker of life returning to his eyes. The day he left, he turned to Ethan. He said nothing, just pulled him into a tight, fierce hug. It was the embrace of 2 souls who had been trapped in the same gilded cage. A hug that said thank you, that shared a terrible burden, and that bid farewell to a dark chapter of their lives. That evening, sitting alone on a park bench near the safe house, Ethan opened his phone. A message from his mother. "Sarah, don't be afraid of what people are saying. I believe in you. As long as you are alive and you are kind. I couldn't be happier." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. He leaned his head on Maya's shoulder and said softly, "I don't want to be a hero. I just want a normal life. To be loved the right way." Maya smiled. "Then from now on, that's how you'll live. As yourself. Not controlled. Not imprisoned. And no longer on the run." That night, after so many days of rain, the sky was finally clear. 3 weeks later, Ethan officially returned to Northwood University. The moment he stepped on campus, he felt the stares not of malice, but of curiosity, pity, and whispers. "That's him. The one the billionaire locked up. He's so handsome. Who would have thought?" He walked faster, his head down, but a hand stopped him. It was Professor Davis, his faculty advisor. "Welcome back, Ethan." The whole class has been waiting for you. I don't know what to say. Except that no matter what the world is saying, you are always welcome here. Ethan was speechless, only able to nod. After everything, those simple words felt like the first warm rays of sun after a long, cold winter. That evening, something unexpected happened. A middle-aged man in a dark suit came to the safe house, introducing himself as Eleanor Vance's legal representative, authorized by her before her compulsory committal. He held a thick file and a sealed envelope. I am here to carry out Mrs. Vance's wishes, in the event that something happened to her. Surprised, Ethan took the letter and opened it. The familiar, elegant handwriting filled the page. Ethan, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer able to see you. I don't ask for your forgiveness. I only hope you understand that I never saw myself as a monster. I was just someone who could not bear to be alone. I have arranged for a scholarship, in your name, so that you can finish your degree. Furthermore, I wish to leave you 15% of my personal assets. As a way to atone. You have every right to refuse, but I trust you will use it wisely. Ethan sat in stunned silence. After reading it, Maya was quiet, too. The emotion they felt was a confusing mix, no longer anger, but not forgiveness either. Just acceptance. 3 days later, Ethan sent a handwritten letter to the facility where Eleanor was being treated. It contained only a few lines. I will not accept the personal assets, but I will keep the scholarship fund to help students in need. It's the last thing I can do so that we may both find peace. There was no reply. But Ethan knew. For the first time since it all began, he was truly in control of his own choices. He did not get rich from his trauma. He did not trade pain for profit. He chose to stand on his own integrity. After weeks of therapy, Ethan's life slowly returned to normal. He went back to his classes, focusing on the high-tech agriculture studies he had always dreamed of. During the university's freshman welcome ceremony, the school announced the establishment of the Hope Scholarship Fund, co-founded by Ethan from the assets Eleanor had left. When his name was called, hundreds of students rose to their feet in applause. But he didn't go to the stage. He just smiled from his seat in the back row, an anonymous part of the crowd. That afternoon, while he and Maya were organizing materials in the library, a middle-aged woman approached them. She was small, with tired but kind eyes. Excuse me. Are you Ethan? Ethan looked up and met her gaze. It was a look so similar to Eleanor's, but so much warmer. It was her older sister. In a small cafe, she quietly told her story. My sister. She used to be a very good person. But after a devastating breakup and losing her first child, her mind changed. We tried to get her help. But after she became successful, she cut off all contact with the family. The woman's voice broke. I didn't come here to ask for anything. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for not answering her cruelty with more hatred. That night, back in his room, Ethan opened an old wooden box where he kept the single photograph taken with Eleanor on her birthday. In the picture, she was smiling, her eyes as gentle as a mother's. He would never know if that moment was real or just another part of the performance. But it no longer mattered. He lit a candle, placed the photo on his desk, and whispered, I forgive you, but am going to live the way you never dared to, free and with kindness. After the Hope Scholarship ceremony, Ethan's name began to be mentioned in student forums as a symbol of resilience. He wasn't known for the sensational headlines, but for the quiet strength of a young man who had faced the darkest parts of life and still chose to stand tall. He was often invited to speak at workshops and freshman orientations. His message was always the same. Never let your trauma turn you into a cold person. The more darkness you walk through, the more you should be the one to hold the light. Maya would sit quietly at the back of every room, her eyes on him, filled with a mix of pride and a lingering worry. One afternoon in early April, Ethan received an email from a prestigious university in the Netherlands, world-renowned for its high-tech agriculture programs. It was an invitation to a year-long student exchange program, offered based on the profile of the Hope Fund, which Ethan represented. He was stunned. Studying abroad had been a distant dream, and now it was within his grasp. But it also meant leaving Maya, leaving the place that had pieced him back together. That night, Maya met him with a warm dinner, just as she always did. But there was something different in her eyes. She knew. Ethan looked at her for a long time before speaking. I was selected for a program in the Netherlands for a year. The flight is in July. But if you tell me to stay, I'll stay. Maya looked down, her eyes glistening. I don't want you to go. But I would never ask you to stay if it meant holding you back from flying higher. He pulled her into a tight hug. I'm just afraid a year is too long to keep you waiting. She looked up, smiling through her tears. You don't need to make any promises. I just need to know that wherever you go, you'll still have a place for me in your heart. From that day on, they prepared for his journey together. Ethan studied English and took cultural integration classes. Maya worked more part-time hours, saving every dollar, secretly booking a round-trip plane ticket so that one day, when she could fly out to see him. Their love wasn't loud, but in its quietness, it grew deeper. A week before his departure, Ethan returned to the Silver Creek Villa, the place where it all began. The house was now sealed, moss growing on the gates, the nameplate removed. Only a few withered potted plants remained. He stood there for a long time, the wind rustling through the dry leaves. The curtain on the third floor was still. Eleanor Vance, the woman who once held his fate in her hands, was now a patient whose name no longer appeared in the media. But Ethan hadn't forgotten. He bowed his head slightly and whispered, I don't resent you, but am choosing a different path. From now on, I will write my own story, and I will no longer be a prisoner. On his last night, Ethan and Maya sat on the rooftop of her dormitory. I'll write to you every week, he promised. If I ever feel weak, just knowing you're there will be enough to give me courage. She replied softly. I'm here. I'll always be the home you can return to. The cool night breeze felt like the start of a new season, a new journey. This time, it wasn't a path into darkness, but one of Ethan's own choosing, with a heart that had been reborn. The plane landed in the Netherlands on a calm, quiet morning. Ethan stepped into a new land, a mix of excitement and anxiety. The first week was overwhelming: the disciplined lifestyle, the brutally honest professors, the polite but distant classmates. Maya's emails were his only anchor. One evening, in a seminar on applied biotechnology, Ethan submitted a paper on restoring polluted farmland in the United States. After class, a tall, silver-haired professor named Adrian asked him to stay behind. You're from the States? Yes, sir, Ethan replied. The professor studied him for a moment. I had an American student once. She was brilliant, but very lonely. Her name was Eleanor Pham. Ethan froze. He learned she had been a warm person who, after graduating, had vanished from all contact. Do you know her? The professor asked. Ethan swallowed hard. I used to live with her. Professor Adrian, a leading expert in regenerative agriculture, didn't ask any more questions. He simply said, if you want to learn how to heal people's hearts, perhaps you should start with the land you love. From that day on, he took Ethan into his private research group. He never asked about Ethan's past, but he taught him how to face his fears, his failures, and his own imperfections. The letters Ethan wrote to Maya were now filled with these lessons. He was learning that no one starts out strong, but if you dare to accept your own emptiness, you can fill it with meaning. In his third month, Ethan submitted a proposal to a competition held by the European Academy of Agriculture. The topic was regenerating life from abandoned lands, not just a scientific study, but a metaphor for his own journey. Professor Adrian read it and said only one thing: you are not just a researcher. You are someone who knows how to transform trauma into hope. That night, Ethan wrote an email to Eleanor, knowing she would never read it. I met your old professor. He wasn't angry with you. He was just sad that the light in you, which was once so beautiful, had gone out. I'm not angry with you anymore, either. Because if it weren't for you, I would never have known how desperately people who are hurting still long for love. Outside his window, snow began to fall. For the first time in his life, Ethan touched it. It was cold, but it didn't numb him, because a small fire of purpose and kindness was burning within him. In June, the snow melted and tulips bloomed, heralding the arrival of summer. It was also when Ethan received official notice that he had been chosen to present his research at the European Sustainable Agriculture Conference. His paper had been selected from over 200 submissions, making him the youngest American to be so honored. When he took the stage, he wore a simple suit with a small hope pin on the lapel. His speech was brief. Sometimes, people don't need to be saved by money or fame. They just need to be heard, to be trusted, and to be given the chance to choose a different path. The entire hall rose in a standing ovation. As people came to congratulate him, he smiled, his eyes searching the crowd for one familiar face. That evening, at a small train station, a familiar voice came from behind him. "The train is running 15 minutes late. Remember my habit of texting you about things like that?" Ethan turned. Maya was standing there, a small suitcase in her hand. Her cheeks flushed from the cold but her eyes shining. He was speechless for a moment before walking over and taking her hand. How are you here? "I told you I was studying a new language." She beamed. "I applied for an exchange to the exact same university you're at. I was accepted. I kept my promise." He pulled her into a hug. And amid the gently falling snow, his heart was too full for words. In the months that followed, they lived in a small apartment near the university, studying, cooking, and simply being with each other in peace. One day, a package arrived from Eleanor's sister. Inside was an old diary. A final entry read, "I used to think love was about possession, but you made me realize that true love is about letting someone be free. I am sorry. And thank you for not turning your hatred into another shadow. I hope you will be happy, in a way I never dared to be." Ethan closed the diary and placed a white tulip on the windowsill. The shadow of Eleanor Vance had finally receded into the past. No longer a haunting ghost, but a profound lesson. A year later, they returned to the United States and together, they founded a sustainable agriculture center in Silver Creek, on the very land where the villa once stood. The iron fences and gates were gone, replaced by an open space for students, farmers, and the community to learn and rebuild their trust in the land. "We can't erase what happened," Ethan once said, "but we can choose to write the rest of our story differently." Maya smiled, leaning against him. "And this time, well, write it together, so no one has to be alone again." Eventually, people stopped talking about the scandalous story of the student and the billionaire. Instead, they talked about Ethan and Maya as proof that true love isn't about finding a perfect person, but about standing together to overcome life's greatest imperfections. Life is full of unexpected, sometimes cruel, turns that can make us lose our way. Ethan, the poor student, had been pushed to the brink, but he chose not to live with hatred. Mai, the patient and simple girl, possessed a faith that money could never buy. And Eleanor, the powerful woman who thought she could control love itself, was ultimately left to face her own conscience, the heaviest sentence of all. This story was never about age gaps or wealth disparity. The greatest lesson is to never use your own trauma as a weapon to hurt someone else. Good people can be exploited and harmed, but if they hold on to their heart, they will ultimately win. We cannot choose where we come from, but we can always choose how to live, how to love, and how to stand up instead of placing blame. And when we do that, no matter how many times life knocks us down, we will always be the victors. Thank you all for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below. Your support means the world to us.